Welcome to Kamailio and Asterisk, what, why, and how. And it's great to be back here at Astricon. I'd love to be in person with everyone. That's my favorite, but I'm very grateful for Sanjoma and everyone to protect our health and have this one virtually. So even though I'd rather not do it virtually, I'm happy that it is this year. So what are we going to talk about today? Today, we're going to start off with an introduction where I'm going to lovingly talk about myself. Then we're going to get into what is Kamailio, why use Kamailio, and how to integrate it with Asterisk. So as our introduction begins, I think the first important thing to do is to talk about this word Kamailio. So the first thing I like to do is teach you how to pronounce it. And so I have it spelled phonetically for you, Kamailio. It's a Hawaiian word. It means to communicate. And yes, it's not one of those words that you can just look at and usually come up with the correct pronunciation, but it's a Hawaiian word to communicate. We even have an Allison sound file on the kamailio.org website. Who am I? My name is Fred Posner. This is a picture of my beautiful wife and amazing daughter. I'm based in Florida. I've been using Asterisk for just over 20 years. I'm a consultant with LOD and the Posner Group, and I'm extremely honored to be a member of the Kamailio project. You can find me on Twitter. You might not want to, but the best way I have of communicating with people is using Matrix, and I have my Matrix address up there. And my personal contact information is qxork.com. For you phone nerds out there, QXORK are all hard sounds, so you shouldn't have to do Q as in Quebec, things like that. So doesn't really spell anything. Now, for the presentation today, I'm going to expect that you have little to no Kamailio knowledge, that you're somewhat familiar with Asterisk, this is Astricon, and that you're somewhat familiar with VoIP, because again, it's Astricon. So let's get right into it. What is Kamailio? Kamailio is a central part of any unified communication platform. Doesn't really mean a lot to many people when I say something like that and I show this kind of picture. So I'm going to get into this as we discuss more. The big thing to know is that we've been celebrating 20 years this year. So this is our 20th anniversary. So happy birthday, Kamailio. When we talk about Kamailio, it's a SIP proxy server, a SIP registrar server, a SIP location server, a SIP application server, a SIP dispatcher server, and it can even be a WebSocket server. Now, it's an open source SIP server, and the keywords there are open source, and you'll notice the word SIP a few times. Kamailio really excels in handling of the SIP protocol, and which is kind of redundant, but it handles SIP extremely well. It's not something that you would use to replace PRI lines unless you have something else that would convert those PRI lines to SIP. But Kamailio is a SIP server, open source SIP server. It has a modular architecture based with a core and some internal libraries and a module interface that extends that functionality. We have over 200 modules. Now, because of this modular architecture, we have a very small footprint. And since what we do is SIP, we are extremely fast. Again, we're open source, 20 years of experience. We have an impressive extension repository, again, with more than 200 modules. Plug and play, where you can just add new extensions without touching that core, which provides us an extremely stable environment and product. We have RPC control of the system, and configuration is done with syntax similar to scripting languages, or you can use our Kemi interface, which allows you to use, let's say, Python, JavaScript, or write configuration files in your language of choice. What isn't Kamailio? Kamailio is not a back-to-back user agent. It's not a SIP phone. It's not a media server, and it's not a transcoder. Doesn't do transcoding. Now, what does all those things? Of course, Asterisk. So let's let Asterisk do what it does best. Now, I have a star on there for media server and transcoding, And that's because we integrate very well with RTP Engine. And RTP Engine, through its module, allows you to set up proxy and proxy media, as well as now transcode some of the media, as well as bridge it. So you could do some media bridging and things like that. But we'll get into that as the presentation continues. Now, I want to set up here, even though we're not in person, I am leaving room for questions, and there should be an opportunity for us to engage in a question and answer period, which is my favorite thing of doing these presentations. So please, as you get questions, we'll have an opportunity at the end of this presentation to do a question and answer period. I'm leaving in my hope and goal around 15 minutes for those. So if we don't get questions, I'm going to have to sing and dance, which is no one wants. No one wants that at all. So please get your questions ready, and we'll hit them at the end of the presentation. Now, why would you use Kamailio? Well, to answer that, let me tell you about Roman concrete. What? Roman concrete is amazing. Okay, you have some Roman concrete that was used like in marinas and things like that, that are still around today after 2,000 years. Now, why? Because of volcanic ash. And what we've learned is that sometimes when you mix different things together, when you combine different things, you create something very, very strong. And with that metaphor or analogy, because I think I used like, we have Kamailio and Asterisk being better together, much like chips and salsa in the last slide. So there are things that when we combine Kamailio with Asterisk, we get an extremely strong product that will be around for 2,000 years. No, all joking aside, by working together, we have better security, scalability. We have some bridging capabilities, which I absolutely love using Kamailio and Asterisk for. High availability opportunities and things like that. But by combining Kamailio and Asterisk, you get improved security, scalability, and some amazing bridging options. In talking about some of the security that you can achieve through Kamailio, just as a simple SIP edge router. And a SIP edge router is kind of like an SBC. There's a whole huge discussion that we can have as to what is an SBC, what isn't an SBC. In all fundamental purposes, you can just say, yes, it's like an SBC here. But some of the security that we can help you with is SQL injections, SIP flood attacks, many different types of authentication and prevention in that way. And an example of security in the most simple state would just be putting your Kamailio system in front of your Asterisk. So think of it as a firewall for SIP, as a SIP firewall, or in other words, a SIP edge router. In its most simple state, though, Kamailio can just act as that SIP edge router or SBC, even just for one Asterisk node. So you can have Asterisk, let's say, with a NATed IP if you wanted, and have all of your SIP and RTP pass through Kamailio. And that way on Asterisk, everything is private, everything is locked down, and Kamailio is the front to the internet for you. And it would handle all of your gatekeeping and things like that. You can have multiple Asterisk systems, of course, and that brings us to scalability. Now, I do want to harp on, even though I just said that you can have a private IP address, you don't have to. You don't even have to proxy media. You could have your media go directly from Asterisk to the endpoints, or you can proxy it through Kamailio. With RTP Engine, you can do a really good amount of media proxying efficiently. So in most cases, I do recommend doing it that way. But you know, every deployment is its own special, unique, beautiful being. But with more Asterisk nodes, you can achieve some scalability. So the same design that you would have for one node, you can easily scale just by adding more nodes. So almost an N+1 architecture there. And this is especially awesome when you're using private IPs for Asterisk. This becomes very, very scalable because you don't have to change anything for your clients. As far as they know, they're just connecting to the same IP, and then what you're doing behind Kamailio is your own private business. The beautiful thing is that Kamailio has the many ways to detect if one of these Asterisk nodes would be down and divert traffic to another available node. So even when you, it can even alert you so that you know when that node becomes unresponsive. The dispatcher module, and remember Kamailio is module based. So one of the 200 plus modules that we have is the dispatcher module, which is amazing for load balancing. And this dispatcher module makes it very easy to do this type of monitoring and load balancing, and can even continue probing that down node and reactivate it once it becomes responsive again. So for example, you were just rebooting it or something like that. So Asterisk can then just divert the traffic, or Kamailio can divert the traffic to the other available nodes and then reintroduce traffic to that down node once it comes online again. We talked about some of the bridging that you can do with Kamailio, and it can be an excellent bridge to Asterisk, allowing you to simplify your Asterisk configuration and deployment. So you keep your Asterisk the same, but you want to introduce IPv6, for example, you could just have that through Kamailio. So as far as Asterisk is concerned, all of the traffic is still on IPv4, but I've introduced IPv6, and Kamailio will just bridge that to Asterisk. We can do the same with WebRTC nodes. You can have WebRTC connect through Kamailio's WebSocket server and then convert that to just SIP to Asterisk. So as far as Asterisk is concerned, and through RTP engine, the media changes as well. As far as Asterisk is concerned, it's just normal SIP traffic that would get normally, and Kamailio is handling all of the bridging for that on that network side. We can do that with TLS and UDP. So you can introduce TLS, but not have to change anything on Asterisk, which also improves some of Asterisk's performance, right? Because TLS does have somewhat of an increased CPU usage and memory and things like that, right? It's a whole different protocol there. But Kamailio can bridge TLS to UDP, making certificate management less of a nightmare, as well as simplifying, again, your Asterisk setup. And then with RTP engine as well, you can also bridge SRTP to RTP. So outside of your network, all of the RTP can be encrypted if you'd like. So that really helps with some HIPAA requirements and things like that, as well as just security, especially now with remote workers. You can have your internal traffic as you normally would. Hopefully that's already protected. And then outside of your data center or network or whatever internet facing, you could have, you could require, if you wanted, SRTP. And, you know, as far as your Asterisk is concerned, you wouldn't even have to change your config. Kamailio would handle all of that bridging for you, the whole point of bridging. With high availability, we have a built-in module called DMQ, which allows Kamailio to share call states, registration, billing, any other kind of information you would like to keep track of across multiple nodes, locations, and more. We offer high availability through Anycast, BGP, DNS, or any other network methods of failover. You can maintain geographically highly available clusters for your systems, and then with Kamailio modules, the states of calls, or, you know, the status, can all be tracked. You know, it helps you allocate calls per second, for example, across multiple network nodes or network deployments and things like that, as well as failover, and it just, you know, globally centric, so a user can reach whatever node is closest to them, things like that. So Kamailio has been designed for these types of deployments, and we really encourage high availability for your Asterisk by using those functions of Kamailio. Okay, let's talk a little bit about how we do things. And I'm just going to give a couple of examples because, again, it's pretty complex at this point, but let's talk into it. First example I'd like to talk about is the PIKE module. And the PIKE module has been around for 15 years. So it's pretty well established here. Now, PIKE is there to handle anti-flood handling. And if you have your Asterisk connected to the internet, you absolutely know that people are hitting you left and right that you don't want to talk to. You have no desire of talking with them. You have no reason to have them connecting. And they're connecting and connecting. Some of these are using high performance systems and just sending you, many calls per second, or many registration attempts per second, things like that. So with the PIKE example, we can go ahead and block traffic that would potentially impact your systems. And we can use that in combination with an H table, which is a hash table memory module for Kamailio, as well as DMQ, which is that module I briefly discussed that lets us talk to other Kamailios to proactively block traffic from other locations or to other locations. So if the NATO approach is what I call it. So if you attack one of my systems, you've attacked all of them, and we can preemptively block you from sending traffic to any of the units or nodes. Now, I have another presentation called API BAM, which talks about some other proactive ways of blocking that, but that's outside of this discussion today. So how would you implement PIKE? So with all basic modules within Kamailio, you first need to just load the module and then configure the module. And then later on, you can call the module. So we load the module by simply saying load module pike.so. We configure the module by entering the sample time unit that we'd like, the request density per unit. So this is saying, okay, within 2 seconds, if someone hits me with more than 20 different requests, I am going to block them for 4 seconds. And that's just using PIKE. And the way that you would call that is, let's say, through the main SIP route. When someone hits me, I'm going to check, okay, did they reach that limit? And if they did, I'm going to alert, okay, I have a PIKE alert from this IP. SI means source IP, and SP is a variable for the source port. And so that's just making a log alert saying that I had a PIKE attack from, or a PIKE flood detection notice from this IP and this port. And then I'm going to exit it. So I'm not going to send a response to that unit or anything. I'm just going to drop it. At this same point, I could add an H table to block future, an H table entry, for example, to block future requests, or send that information with DMQ, whatever I'd like to do. So it's that simple. Now, we have another module that came out in Kamailio 5.3, which is 2 versions ago. We're on 5.5 as of this talk. And it's a security filter, so SECFILTER. And what this does is it provides allow and block lists where you can choose the user agent, an IP, country, domain name, or simply users to allow or block. And they're stored in memory, loaded from a database. It also can block SQL injection blocks very simply, like right out of the gate. So love doing it this way. An example of using security filter would be, again, first you load the module. So in this case, we're going to load a module SECFILTER. Before it, we're also going to load the GeoIP2 module. And that's just using the GeoIP library to help identify IP and geographical location. We set it up by saying, for example, where in the database we're going to get the settings for this or get the lists. We're going to determine whether or not we're going to have a match. And then as simply from there, if, for example, if we wanted to do a GeoIP match, we're going to check that source IP, which is that $SI. And then we're going to check if that country is in our allow list or block list. And if it's, for example, just like block, let's say by default, we're allowing all and we're just using a block list. So if it matches the block list, we are going to send an alert to our log, and then we are going to drop it. So we're not going to let traffic from that IP come in because it's from a country that we've chosen not to allow in. And so again, that's all handling from Kamailio. We're not sending a response in this part with an exit. You could choose to if you wanted to, but you know, sometimes they're just probing you to see if you even respond so that they can attack you harder. So just ignore it and move on in this example. Now, one of the biggest questions I get when someone considers moving or implementing Kamailio with their Asterisk is, well, what do I do with the user registrations? Okay, I already have all of my users handled in, you know, let's say PJSIP now, because we're, you know, it's no longer 2015 here. So I have my users configured, and I just don't want to move them all, or what do I do? How do I handle this? And there's basically two options. You can choose to offload your users and just have Kamailio handle everything in terms of user registration, or you can have Kamailio proxy that information to Asterisk and act as a mid-registrar. Which one should you do? And there's no simple answer here. If you are starting something from the beginning, it's really easy to say you should move that to Asterisk. I mean, you should move that to Kamailio. Just have Kamailio handle everything. You're already starting from scratch, so let's build it the way that allows us to have incredible scalability. If you already have existing users, then there's a significant change, right, in moving how you're handling user authentication. Now, you might be doing different things in your dial plan based on whether a user is registered, which you wouldn't immediately get to know just from an Asterisk command, because Asterisk doesn't know it's registered now on Kamailio instead of Asterisk. So in those cases, I like a mid-registrar to act until you can gracefully send things over to Kamailio should you need to. And a mid-registrar would just basically, and again, we've done this since 2010 at Kamailio, but a mid-registrar would still handle some security and things like that, but Asterisk itself would do the authentication of that user and password, and then the registration state would stay in Asterisk. We use the UAC module for this, although we can also do it with just custom dial plan manipulation or Kamailio config manipulation there. Kamailio will handle security, such as everything we've discussed with PIKE and SECFILTER, or user agent blocking. You know, it can keep track of how many attempts were made. So let's say somebody tries to register 3 times, we then block them if you wanted, you know, anything like that. But Kamailio can handle that kind of bouncing activity as a door bouncer. It can handle multiple Asterisk nodes. So it could say, okay, well, this user is on Asterisk 1, this user is on Asterisk 2, let me send it there, things like that. And then based on if Asterisk says that, yes, this is an authenticated user, which would usually be a 200 OK from a registration. At that point, Kamailio could act as a true mid-registrar and, let's say, give Asterisk a registration time of an hour, but to that client, do a registration of 60 seconds. So Kamailio is keeping the firewall open, doing keep alives and things like that. Whereas with Asterisk, we are greatly reducing the amount of registration traffic that Asterisk has to handle, which then increases performance dramatically. So a mid-registrar is a really good feature and something that helps a lot of people when they're transitioning. I generally like to offload traffic whenever possible, and the biggest reason why is because of the amount of users that Kamailio can safely handle. So on Asterisk, you know, you start getting 200, 400 users, you start seeing a lot of traffic, and it kind of takes away some of the CPU that you would just normally use for other call handling, and you start seeing that the overhead that Asterisk needs to handle, you know, well over 400 users is significant. Well, on Kamailio, handling 100,000 users on a system is not an issue at all. And it just because it does SIP and just nothing else, and it's designed for SIP, what you can do with Kamailio and scale is just dramatic. So, hundreds of thousands of users on a single system is not an option. And if you want to scale up to hundreds and hundreds of thousands or millions of users, you can just add more Kamailios to the mix. And so by handling presence and everything like that on Kamailio, Asterisk just handles the media that you would need to do. Let's say cues, conferencing, playing back of sound files, the fun stuff that we can't do in Kamailio, but that's a lot of fun, waiting for silence, the fun types of actual phone calls, as well as transcoding if you want to. This picture of the thundering herd is the reason why I got into Kamailio. Back then it was OpenSARE, and this was early 2000s, and we were running Asterisk nodes. We only had 5,000 users at that time, but we had an SBC in front of some Asterisk boxes. We had an Acme packet at the time, and we were in a carrier hotel in New York. And for some freakish reason, there were two construction sites going on one side of the road, one on the other side of the road. And they both cut fibers, which ended up being both of our ISPs. So we were dead in the water. No user could reach to us. And when one finally came back online, Acme packet couldn't handle the thundering herd of users trying to register. And again, we only had 5,000 registrations. Even though we had a high level of support from Acme packet, the timing that they needed to get back to us was days. And so in that time, we were able to implement an OpenSARE server to replace the Acme packet. And it worked so well that we didn't even think it was working because all the users just registered. So, the registration amount that it can handle and the speed that it can handle is just phenomenal. And ever since then, I've just been a huge fan of Kamailio project. Now that brings us up to, example of staying up all night. How do you do these types of implementations? So again, we're a really friendly community. One of the reasons why I like Kamailio so much and why I became so involved with the project is because of how friendly the community is. It's a community where if you ask for help, people will respond. Even newbie questions and things like that, people aren't going to do the work for you, but they're certainly going to steer you into the right direction and to help you where you need to go and to give you examples and things like that. The website for the project is kamailio.org. From there, you can get some mail lists. We have a users mail list for those that are just looking for implementation and deployment. There's a developers mail list for those of you that would like to contribute to the development of the project. Again, it's open source, so all the source code is available and contributions are encouraged and accepted from the community. And so we have a dev list for that. We also have, it hasn't been as active lately, but we do have IRC. There's a Slack room for Kamailio, and we also have a Matrix node, and we're friendly. We're looking to help as many people with this. SIP is a very complicated protocol, and a lot of times it's not that you need help with Kamailio directly, but understanding what's going on with the SIP there, and then everything just kind of falls into place. And I love this community, and we're more than happy to help you. Now with that, if I've timed everything correctly, we should have about 15 minutes for questions. And so I'm really looking forward to your questions. Thank you so much for having me back at AstroCon. If you would like to contact me directly, qxork.com. To visit more about Kamailio, kamailio.org. I'm on Twitter at Fred Posner, and I have these slides posted to pgpx.io/AST21. So thank you so much. And with that, I look forward to your questions.